The afternoon sunlight streamed through the large glass windows of Elan Boutique, one of the city's most exclusive retail stores. Known for its curated collection of luxury items, the store was a haven for high-profile clientele, from celebrities to wealthy business moguls. The soft hum of classical music played in the background, adding an air of sophistication to the already polished ambiance. Sales associates moved discreetly between displays, attending to customers with a practiced grace that matched the store's high standards. Among the racks of designer pieces and glimmering showcases of fine jewelry, the entrance bell chimed softly, signaling the arrival of a new patron. A black buyer stepped into the store, his tailored jacket and polished shoes speaking volumes about his taste and demeanor. He moved with quiet confidence, his eyes scanning the displays thoughtfully, as if searching for something specific. To the untrained eye, he was simply another customer, one among many who frequented the store. But to the store manager, stationed near the back counter, he stood out in ways that didn't sit well. The manager, a middle-aged man with slicked-back hair and a pinstriped suit, narrowed his eyes as he observed the buyer from a distance. His posture stiffened slightly, his hands folding in front of him as his gaze turned critical. "Do you see that?" the manager whispered to a nearby associate, nodding discreetly in the direction of the buyer. The associate hesitated, glancing at the man before turning back to the manager with uncertainty. "Yes," she replied quietly, "but he looks like he knows what he's doing." "Should we approach him?" The manager smirked, shaking his head dismissively. "I'll handle it," he said, straightening his jacket. His tone was laced with condescension, a subtle air of superiority that hinted at the assumptions already forming in his mind. "Keep an eye on him." As the buyer moved to a display case of vintage watches, his hand hovering briefly over a particularly intricate timepiece, the manager made his way across the store. His approach was calculated, his steps deliberate as he prepared to make an impression, not of welcome, but of suspicion. "Can I help you with something?" the manager asked, his voice polite but tinged with an underlying skepticism. His eyes flickered to the buyer's hands, as if checking for signs of mischief. The buyer looked up, his expression calm and unbothered. "Yes," he replied evenly, meeting the manager's gaze. "I'm looking for something unique. Do you have anything from the limited edition collection?" The manager's eyebrows arched slightly, surprised by the specificity of the request. Still, he maintained his guarded demeanor. "We do," he said, gesturing toward a locked display case on the far wall. "But those are very exclusive pieces, not usually available for casual shoppers." The buyer tilted his head slightly, the corners of his lips lifting in a small smile. "That's exactly what I'm looking for," he said, taking a step toward the display. The manager hesitated for a moment, exchanging a brief glance with another associate across the room. The message in his eyes was clear. "Watch this one." As the buyer reached the case, the manager stepped in closer, positioning himself as if to oversee the interaction. Inside the case lay a collection of rare watches, each more exquisite than the last. The buyer's eyes landed on one with a deep sapphire face and intricate gold detailing. "May I see this one?" he asked, pointing to the piece. The manager pursed his lips, feigning a thoughtful pause. "It's quite expensive," he said pointedly. "Perhaps I could show you something a bit more accessible." The words hung in the air, thick with implication. A quiet tension rippled through the room as a few nearby customers glanced over, sensing the unease. The buyer's expression didn't falter, but a flicker of disappointment crossed his eyes. He straightened slightly, his voice firm but polite. I'd still like to see it. Reluctantly, the manager unlocked the case, retrieving the watch with an exaggerated caution that felt more like a performance. "This one is a limited edition piece," he said, holding it just out of the buyer's reach. "Designed by one of the most prestigious artisans in the industry. It's not for everyone." The buyer nodded patiently, extending his hand to take the watch. As he examined it closely, the manager's gaze lingered on him, a mix of doubt and subtle disdain. "It's impressive," the buyer said, setting the watch back in the case gently. "I'll take it." The manager blinked, caught off guard by the decisiveness of the statement. He hesitated, then forced a tight-lipped smile. "Are you sure?" he asked, his tone almost mocking. "It's not a small investment." The buyer met his gaze squarely. "I am," he said. "Let's proceed." The manager's smile faltered, his confidence shaken slightly. "Very well," he muttered, turning toward the register. But as he walked away, a shadow of disbelief lingered on his face. To him, the buyer's assuredness felt like a challenge, one he wasn't ready to accept. The scene had shifted subtly, the energy in the room charged with an unspoken tension. Other patrons watched from the corners of their eyes, curious about the unfolding dynamic. The buyer, however, remained poised, exuding an air of composure that hinted at a story yet untold. Whatever assumptions the manager had made, he was about to discover just how misplaced they were. The black buyer had built a life of quiet success, marked not by loud declarations, but by determined action. He was a self-made entrepreneur, a visionary investor, and a philanthropist who believed in creating opportunities where none existed before. Years of relentless effort had shaped his career, overcoming barriers that would have discouraged many. His wealth wasn't just monetary, it was built on the principles of humility, integrity, and hard work. Despite his achievements, he avoided ostentation. For him, success was not about flaunting wealth, but about making meaningful contributions to the world. On this particular day, his purpose for entering the exclusive store was personal and thoughtful. He intended to buy a special gift, perhaps a rare timepiece for a mentor who had guided him through the early days of his career, or an investment piece for a loved one. Dressed sharply, but without the conspicuous brands often associated with wealth, he blended seamlessly into the crowd. He valued substance over appearances, and while the glitz of the store was not unfamiliar to him, it wasn't his preferred environment. He entered with a sense of purpose, confident in his ability to navigate the situation, but unaware of the storm that was about to brew. The store manager prided himself on maintaining what he called the integrity of the store's exclusivity. In his eyes, this meant ensuring that only a certain type of customer was welcomed warmly, those who fit a preconceived mold of wealth and status. His biases, deeply rooted and rarely challenged, colored his perception of everyone who walked through the door. To him, the store was more than just a workplace. It was a fortress of prestige, a bastion of high society where he saw himself as the gatekeeper. He often boasted to colleagues about his ability to read people, making snap judgments based on appearances. He saw this as a skill, not recognizing the arrogance and prejudice underlying it. When the black buyer entered the store that day, the manager's gaze locked on him almost immediately. His sharp suit and calm demeanor didn't register as signs of success to the manager. Instead, they sparked a sense of suspicion. To the manager, this customer didn't fit the profile of someone who belonged in the store's gilded halls. His assumptions were subtle, but powerful, shaping every action he took. From the moment the buyer stepped in, the manager had already made up his mind about who this person was, and, more importantly, who he wasn't. It wasn't malice that drove his behavior, but a dangerous combination of arrogance and ignorance, a belief that his judgments were infallible. As he observed the buyer moving through the store, his biases blinded him to the truth. He didn't see the accomplished entrepreneur or the kind-hearted philanthropist standing before him. He saw only a disruption to the polished image he worked so hard to curate. And so, he prepared to intervene, oblivious to how drastically his assumptions would backfire. The black buyer, after meticulously browsing through the store's high-end selection, finally found what they were looking for: a rare, exquisitely crafted item that perfectly met their needs. Approaching the counter, they maintained a composed and courteous demeanor, ready to make their purchase. However, before they could proceed, the store manager, who had been observing from the sidelines, stepped forward, intercepting them with a dismissive smirk. "Are you sure you're in the right place?" the manager asked, his tone dripping with condescension. He cast a glance at the item in the buyer's hands, raising an eyebrow as if the very idea of them purchasing it was absurd. The buyer, taken aback but determined to remain calm, responded politely, "Yes, I'd like to purchase this." The manager's expression hardened. "Do you realize how much that costs? We don't do layaway or payment plans here," he added, his voice loud enough to draw the attention of nearby customers and staff. The buyer's calm exterior remained unshaken. "I'm well aware of the cost. I'd like to proceed with my purchase now." Instead of acknowledging their professionalism, the manager escalated. "We've had issues with situations like this before. Perhaps it's best if you shop elsewhere," he said, his words barely veiling the overt racism in his assumptions. The exchange grew increasingly tense as the manager continued to question the buyer's ability to pay, insinuating that they didn't belong in the store. The buyer's attempts to assert their right to shop were met with further humiliation. The scene attracted attention from other patrons and staff. While some looked on uncomfortably, unsure of how to intervene, others discreetly recorded the incident on their phones, recognizing the blatant prejudice on display. Humiliated, but refusing to let their dignity falter, the buyer set the item down gently on the counter. "Thank you for making it clear how you run your establishment," they said, their voice steady and controlled. Without another word, they turned and walked out of the store, head held high. The manager watched them leave with a smug sense of satisfaction, convinced that he had upheld the store's standards by removing what he perceived as an unworthy customer. He failed to notice the murmurs of disapproval from the other patrons or the discreet phones capturing his behavior. Unbeknownst to him, the buyer left not in defeat, but with a silent resolve. They knew exactly how they would respond to the humiliation they had endured, and it would be a response the manager and the store would never forget. The following morning, the luxurious store awoke to startling news that rippled through its staff and regular clientele. Overnight, the ownership of the prestigious establishment had changed hands. Whispers of speculation filled the air as employees buzzed with curiosity, their questions mounting as they awaited confirmation of the identity of the new owner. Shortly thereafter, the truth emerged in a stunning revelation. The new owner was none other than the black buyer who had been dismissed and humiliated by the store manager the day before. The same individual who had calmly endured the public insult had used their considerable wealth and connections to purchase the store outright. The news sent shockwaves through the staff, particularly the manager, who had spent the previous day smugly reveling in his assumed triumph. As the reality of the situation settled over him, his confidence gave way to an overwhelming sense of dread. Later that day, the new owner arrived at the store, not as a customer, but as its rightful leader. They walked through the front doors with the same composed demeanor as before, yet this time the aura of authority around them was unmistakable. The staff, who had either witnessed or participated in the previous day's events, watched in stunned silence as the owner approached the center of the store. The former manager's face turned pale as he realized who was now in charge. His attempts to blend into the background were futile, as the new owner directly addressed the team and the customers present. "Good morning," the owner began, their voice calm but commanding. "I'm sure many of you are aware of yesterday's incident. I came into this store as a customer, hoping to make a purchase, but instead I experienced something unacceptable: prejudice and disrespect." The weight of their words filled the air. The owner's gaze swept across the room, landing momentarily on the manager, whose discomfort was visible to all. "This establishment is now under new ownership," they continued, "and I assure you that moving forward, this will be a place where every customer is treated with the dignity and respect they deserve, regardless of their background or appearance. There will be no room for bias or discrimination here." The patrons in the store murmured their approval, some even clapping in support. Meanwhile, the manager, now the embodiment of regret, could barely meet the owner's eyes as he stood frozen in place, grappling with the realization of his own undoing. What had begun as an act of prejudice had now become a lesson in humility, a shift in power that promised lasting change. The new owner wasted no time in setting the tone for the store's transformation. Standing in front of the staff and patrons, they addressed the manager directly. "Yesterday, you made a choice," they began, their calm voice carrying an edge of finality. "A choice to treat a customer with disdain and disrespect based solely on assumptions and prejudice. That choice reflects poorly on you, but it also tarnishes this establishment and what it stands for. That ends today." The manager, visibly shaken, opened his mouth as if to speak, but quickly fell silent under the weight of the moment. "Effective immediately. You are relieved of your position," the owner continued. "This store will not tolerate discrimination or any behavior that diminishes the dignity of others." Gasps rippled through the room. While some staff members looked shocked, others seemed relieved. The manager, once so smug and confident, now appeared small and defeated as he gathered his belongings and walked out under the watchful eyes of employees and customers. Turning back to the remaining staff, the owner addressed those who had witnessed the incident. "To those of you who stood by silently or participated in the mistreatment, know that this is your opportunity to reflect and change. From now on, accountability will be a cornerstone of how we operate. Those unwilling to meet these standards will find no place here. However, those who strive to create a better, more inclusive environment will have my full support." The owner also took a moment to commend those who had shown integrity, whether by offering quiet support to the customer during the incident or by refusing to engage in the manager's behavior. Their actions, the owner emphasized, were examples of the values the store would now uphold. With the initial accountability addressed, the owner shifted to outlining their vision for the store's future. "This establishment has the potential to be a symbol of excellence, not just in the products we sell, but in the way we treat our customers and employees. Moving forward, this will be a space where everyone feels welcome, valued, and respected." They announced plans to implement diversity training for all staff, ensuring that every employee understood the importance of inclusivity and respect. The owner also revealed initiatives to recruit a more diverse workforce, offering opportunities to underrepresented groups within the retail and management sectors. This store will not only reflect the diversity of our city, but celebrate it, the owner declared. We will lead by example, showing that success and fairness are not mutually exclusive, but deeply interconnected. The room filled with cautious optimism as staff and customers alike began to see the potential for a brighter, more inclusive future under the store's new leadership. The transformation was already underway. The store underwent a remarkable transformation under its new ownership. Where exclusivity once stood as a barrier, it now served as a bridge to welcome all who walked through its doors. The policies implemented by the new owner were clear and non-negotiable. Every customer, regardless of their background or appearance, was to be treated with respect and courtesy. Staff underwent rigorous training, not just on the technicalities of retail, but on the deeper values of inclusivity, empathy, and cultural awareness. The changes quickly gained attention, and the store's reputation grew beyond its luxurious products. Customers, some of whom had previously avoided the store due to its unwelcoming atmosphere, began to return, eager to support the revitalized vision. Word spread throughout the city that this once exclusive establishment had become a symbol of progress, a place where excellence wasn't defined solely by price tags, but by values. Former employees who had left due to the toxic culture felt inspired to return, eager to be part of the new chapter. Meanwhile, new hires from diverse backgrounds brought fresh energy and perspectives, further solidifying the store's standing as a model for equitable business practices. The financial results mirrored the cultural shift. Sales soared, and the store attracted not only loyal local patrons but also tourists who came to see what had become an emblem of empowerment. What had once been a symbol of exclusion was now celebrated as a beacon of opportunity. In the owner's sleek, minimalist office overlooking the store's bustling floor, the new leader of the establishment stood quietly, watching the activity below. Shoppers moved through the aisles, greeted warmly by employees who radiated genuine enthusiasm. A group of staff gathered to assist a customer with a purchase, their teamwork reflecting the spirit of collaboration that now defined the workplace. The owner allowed a small, satisfied smile. The memories of the humiliating confrontation that had sparked this journey were still fresh, but they no longer carried the sting of injustice. Instead, they had been transformed into a powerful lesson and an unshakable purpose. A knock on the door broke the moment of reflection. An employee entered sharing a story of a customer who had just praised the store for its inclusivity. The owner nodded, quietly pleased, knowing that each small victory contributed to the larger legacy they were building. Turning back to the window, the owner's gaze lingered on the floor below. The store, once a space marred by bias and arrogance, now stood as a testament to the power of resilience and the importance of action. Respect isn't something you sell, the owner murmured to themselves, their words carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom. It's what turns a business into a legacy. As the sun set over the city, casting a warm glow over the store, it was clear that this was not just a personal triumph, but a victory for everyone who believed in the power of dignity, justice, and progress.